My name is Lena Carter, I'm 26, and last week HR pulled me out of our Monday meeting to ask if I was sleeping with my boss. One moment I was presenting click-through rates, the next, Camille from HR was in the doorway saying, "Lena, we need to talk about your relationship with Rowan." Every head turned, someone smirked, someone suddenly needed to check their notes. I walked that glass hallway with my coffee shaking in my hand, feeling everyone's eyes on my back, knowing a story about me was already spreading. The worst part? I hadn't even done what they were accusing me of. Not yet. Not with him. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever had a toxic boss, a jealous coworker, or been blamed for something you didn't do at work. I read every comment, and you'd be surprised how many people have lived through the same quiet office disasters. If any of this already feels uncomfortably familiar, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. When I started at Hale & West, I was convinced I'd finally outrun the worst parts of my past. I stepped through the building's revolving doors on a windy Monday morning, clutching a new tote bag, wearing a blazer that still smelled like the department store it came from. The lobby was all glass, chrome, and the faint scent of burnt coffee drifting from somewhere behind reception. It felt like the kind of place where people reinvented themselves, not where they got tangled in the same old patterns. The elevator ride to the brand strategy floor hummed with that quiet corporate tension between strangers who all pretend not to make eye contact. When the doors opened, the air shifted from lobby polish to office reality, printers humming, Slack notifications chiming, sneakers squeaking faintly against the glossy floor tiles. "Lena?" a voice called. I turned and saw him. Rowan Hale. Director. The kind of presence that makes other people straighten their posture without realizing why. He wore a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled once, a watch that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and an expression that walked the line between professional interest and something warmer. "I'm Rowan," he said, extending a hand. "Welcome to Brand Strategy. You picked an exciting time to join." His handshake was confident but controlled. I forced myself not to let mine linger. "Thank you," I said. "I'm excited to get started." He smiled like he already knew exactly how I'd fit into his world. As he walked me through the rows of desks, I caught people studying us. A quick glance over a monitor, a raised brow, a half smile from someone who'd clearly seen 100 new hires come and go. And then there was her, Sierra Dalton, senior specialist, 5 years in the company, and the type of woman who always seemed to know which way the internal wind was blowing. Her eyes flicked from Rowan to me, sharp and assessing. "Lena, this is Sierra," Rowan said. "You'll be working together on the Harris account." Sierra gave a smile that felt a little too tight. "Welcome. Hope you're ready. Rowan moves fast." I couldn't tell if she meant it as encouragement or warning. My first week blurred into onboarding meetings, software tutorials, and learning the difference between what the company said it valued and what actually mattered. I'd lived through enough office politics to know you learn more from observing people than from any training document. Eli, the graphic designer, showed me where the good coffee was hidden. "Top shelf is poison," he said. "The middle shelf is drinkable. Bottom shelf? That's the stuff Rowan likes." "Interesting taste," I said. "Questionable always," he replied, grinning. Then there was Maya, my closest friend in the office before I even realized she'd become one. She had a way of sliding into conversations like she'd always been there and dropping quiet truths disguised as jokes. On day 3, she leaned over my desk and whispered, "You walk fast. That's good. Slow walkers never survive in this place." I laughed, but she didn't. "No, seriously," she said. "Keep walking fast." But the moment that stayed with me, the moment that replayed long after everything fell apart, was the first time Rowan publicly praised me. I'd been at the company barely 2 weeks when he asked me to walk through an early analysis in a project meeting. I wasn't expecting it. My hands trembled just slightly as I clicked through the slides, the conference room glowing with cold, white light. I focused on my voice, kept it steady, explained the insight clearly. When I finished, the room was silent for a beat. Then Rowan said, "This is exactly the kind of thinking we've been missing. Great work." The compliment hit hard, not because it felt like flattery, because it felt like validation. A small part of me, the part still recovering from what happened at my last job, breathed a little easier. But that same breath caught when I looked across the table and found Sierra watching me with narrowed eyes. It wasn't jealousy, not the obvious kind. It was a calculation, the kind that says, "Why are you? Why now? And who does it benefit?" Later that afternoon, as I walked to the restroom, I heard footsteps behind me. Sierra's reflection appeared in the mirror as I washed my hands. "You made quite an impression today," she said. "Thank you," I replied. She tilted her head slightly. "Just be careful. Rowan burns through favorites faster than you'd think." I froze. "I'm not—" She lifted a hand. "Relax, just office advice." And she walked out, leaving a faint trail of expensive perfume and something sharper, resentment maybe, or warning. I tried to shake it off. I reminded myself this was a new job, a new city, a new chance. I wasn't the same person I had been at my last workplace, where compliments had slowly turned into unwanted invitations and where mentorship became a trap. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget, and something in me tightened that day, something quiet, something protective. Even then, I had no idea how much I would need that instinct. The first late night at the office happened on a Thursday, the kind of day when the air conditioning felt too cold and the fluorescent lights buzzed just loud enough to remind you how long you'd been staring at a screen. We were behind on the Harris pitch, and I could feel the tension tightening across the entire floor, shoulders raised, eyes strained, Slack messages firing like warning shots. Around 7, people began packing up. Chairs rolled back, backpacks were slung over my shoulders. Someone joked about needing 3 drinks and a new career. I stayed in my chair, finishing a rewrite on a section that still felt flat. Eli lingered at his desk behind me, his headphones around his neck instead of on. It was always a sign he wasn't ready to leave me working alone. "You good?" he asked. "Almost," I said. "Just need this to stop sounding like a robot wrote it." He smiled. "Welcome to marketing." Everyone else trickled out until the office was mostly dark, lit only by the pools of light above the workstations that motion sensors hadn't turned off yet. The hum of the AC and the distant sound of an elevator dinging were the only things keeping the space from feeling abandoned. At 7:42 p.m., Rowan appeared. He leaned against the edge of my desk, hands in his pockets, like he'd just wandered by, except nobody wandered by at that time unless they were looking for someone. "Still here?" he asked. "So are you," I replied. He gave a small shrug. "I like to see how the work comes together. And you," he nodded at my screen, "you're tightening the narrative in a way the team hasn't managed in weeks." There it was again, that line between praise and something heavier, something with heat. I forced a polite smile. "Just trying to make the Monday pitch less painful." He chuckled. "You're doing more than that." When I finally finished and started packing up, Rowan glanced at Eli. "Are you heading out too?" Rowan asked. "Yeah," Eli said, grabbing his backpack. "Lena, you want me to walk you to the subway?" Before I could answer, Rowan spoke. "I'll walk her. I have to pass that way." Eli paused just long enough for it to be noticeable. His eyes flicked to mine, searching for something. Maybe discomfort, maybe preference. Before I could signal anything, he forced a smile. "Sure," he said lightly. "See you tomorrow." After he left, Rowan and I rode the elevator down together. The metal doors reflected our faces back at us, his calm, unreadable, mine tight with mixed emotions. I didn't want him to think I needed protecting. I didn't want anyone else to think about it either. On the sidewalk outside, the city was buzzing the way it only does at night, with headlights reflecting off wet pavement and food trucks closing for the day. "Do you always stay this late?" Rowan asked as we walked. "Only when the work needs it." "That's why I like your style," he said. "You don't hide from the hard parts." I kept my eyes ahead. "It's just the job." "That's what you say," he replied, "but not everyone on the team sees it that way." I stopped walking for a second. "What's that supposed to mean?" Rowan hesitated, then shook his head. "Forget it. Office politics. People resent things they don't understand." I didn't ask what "things" meant. I didn't want the answer. What I didn't know then, what I would only learn later, was that across the street, behind the second-floor glass of the lobby, Sierra was watching us. She wasn't alone, and someone else lifted their phone at the exact moment Rowan stepped a little too close as we parted ways. The next morning, I found a Slack DM from Maya waiting for me before I even sat down. "Maya, did you and Rowan leave together last night?" My breath caught. Me. "He walked me to the station, that's it." Maya. "People saw, just be ready. Sierra's been smirking all morning." Smirking. I could picture it too well. Later that day, during a one-on-one check-in, Rowan mentioned the previous night casually. Too casually. "I hope it didn't make you uncomfortable," he said. "I know how things can look." How things can look. He was right. I was painfully aware of how things looked. But the moment that told me this wasn't just professional concern happened near the end of that same meeting. He stepped behind me to look at a slide I'd been editing, and his hand brushed the back of my chair. Not a touch, not exactly, but close enough that I felt the heat of him. I froze. He noticed. "Sorry," he said softly. "Didn't mean to crowd you." Except he had. A little. And that little was enough to make my pulse jump. I left the room wanting distance. Instead, I walked into a different kind of closeness, the one that forms when people are watching you more than your work. That week, Sierra began sharpening her glances like knives, side-eye in meetings, raised eyebrows when Rowan asked for my opinion, forced smiles when I contributed an idea he liked. But the worst moment came 2 days later. I was in the elevator heading to the lobby when the doors opened and Sierra stepped in with 2 other coworkers. She pretended not to see me for a second, then said loudly, "Some of us get mentorship. Some of us get midnight Slack messages. Guess it depends on what you're bringing to the table." Her friends laughed. I felt the heat climb my neck. I stared straight ahead, heartbeat pounding in my ears. Because the truth was, she wasn't entirely wrong about the messages. She just didn't know the whole story behind them. Or maybe she did. That night, as I lay awake in my small apartment, listening to the radiator hiss, I realized something important. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accidental perception. Someone was building a narrative around me. One late-night message, one lingering look, one walk to the subway at a time. And I was too busy trying to be professional to see the ambush taking shape. The shift wasn't sudden, but once it started, it spread like mold, quiet, creeping, and impossible to ignore. By the end of my first month, the office didn't feel like an open workspace anymore. It felt like a stage, and I was standing under a spotlight I never asked for. The first sign was the way people paused mid-sentence when I walked by. Not obviously, not dramatically, just a small hitch in their conversation, like they needed half a second to decide whether the thing they were saying was safe to say in front of me. I'd catch the tail end of a sentence, "Well, what do you expect?" Or, "You know how he gets." And then nothing. I tried telling myself it was new job paranoia, but then came Monday morning. I arrived early, hoping to get an hour of quiet before the usual storm of Slack pings started. The office was dim except for the emergency lighting, and the carpet smelled faintly of industrial cleaner. As I reached my desk, I saw it. A small folded note placed dead center on my keyboard. I froze. My heart thumped once, painfully. I unfolded it with the same dread you feel opening a rejection letter. "I hope the promotion is worth it." 5 words, thin handwriting, no signature. My stomach dropped as if the floor had shifted under me. There were no promotions happening, no performance conversations, Nothing I should have been even remotely connected to. It didn't matter. Someone had decided the story for me. I crumpled the note and shoved it into my pocket, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound in the office. Even the buzz of lights sounded accusatory. When I looked up, Sierra was leaning by the filing cabinet, phone in her hand, pretending not to watch. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't frowning. She was anticipating, waiting to see what I'd do. I said nothing, and my silence told her everything she needed. By 10 a.m., the whispers were loud enough that I didn't have to strain to catch them. Of course her numbers look good. She gets one-on-one coaching. Rowan's never cared this much about anyone else's segmentation. It must be nice being the director's pet. Pet. Favorite. Worth it. Words stuck to me like grease. Around lunchtime, I went to the pantry to get water. As I walked in, 2 analysts fell quiet so abruptly it was almost comical. One of them forced a smile. "Hey, Lena," she said. "Hey," I replied, pretending not to notice the tension in the air thick enough to chew. I filled my bottle slowly, deliberately, letting the silence drag until they couldn't stand it. When I left, their whispered conversation resumed immediately, and louder. "You saw them Friday night, right?" "Together." He was practically hovering. She looked comfortable. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. Eli found me 10 minutes later, eyes soft with concern. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied, my voice tight. "You sure? Because the whole floor is acting weird, and your face looks like you're 2 seconds away from punching the coffee machine." I huffed a bitter laugh. "If I punch anything, it'll be with spreadsheets." His smile faded. "Lena, someone's messing with you." I paused. "Why do you say that?" "Because I checked the Harris deck," he said. "The numbers that made you look sloppy, they weren't in your version." "I know," I whispered. "I double-checked." "And the version that went out to the team?" he continued. "Guess whose name is in the revision log?" He didn't have to say it. I knew. Sierra. My skin prickled. Anger, fear, and a kind of cold clarity all collided inside me. But the next blow came faster than I was prepared for. That afternoon, the team gathered for our weekly status meeting. Everyone took their usual seats, same chairs, same tired faces, same predictable routine. I tried to blend in, but it was impossible. People kept glancing between me and Rowan's seat, as if waiting for something to happen. Halfway through the meeting, Rowan cleared his throat. "I want to highlight Lena's contribution to the Harris account," he said. "Her segmentation insight led to an 8% lift. That's a big win." I stiffened. I hated that the praise felt like gasoline on a fire he didn't even know was burning. Sierra leaned back in her chair, pen tapping. "Since we're on the subject," she said lightly, "maybe we should address the elephant in the room." My blood ran cold. Rowan frowned. "What elephant?" "The perception," she replied smoothly, "that decisions might be influenced by personal relationships." You could have heard a pin drop. My breath caught. I stared at the table, the grain of the wood blurring. Rowan's voice turned sharp. "This is a professional setting, Sierra." "Oh, I agree." She clasped her hands. "Which is why transparency is important. People saw things last week. Late nights, one-on-ones, leaving together. It creates confusion, and some people feel uncomfortable." "Who?" I asked, my voice icy. She gave a tiny shrug. "People." The non-answer was intentional, enough to cast suspicion, not enough to prove malice. Before I could speak, before Rowan could shut it down, another voice chimed in, the worst one, Josh, the intern. "Yeah," he said awkwardly. "I did see them leave together Friday night." A ripple of murmurs filled the room. Heat flooded my face. My pulse was hammered. Josh looked confused, not malicious, like he didn't fully understand what he'd just stepped into. But Sierra understood. Oh, she thrived. "See?" she said softly. It's not just me noticing. The meeting moved on, but I didn't. My mind replayed every moment: the walk to the subway, the elevator reflection, the way Rowan had stood just a little too close. When the meeting finally adjourned, I moved toward the exit, needing air, needing space. Then I froze. Near the elevators, Rowan and Sierra were talking quietly. She leaned in slightly, touched his forearm in a way that felt rehearsed. He didn't pull back. Their conversation lasted only seconds, but it was enough. When Sierra turned, she made sure to catch my eye. Her smile was small, satisfied, victorious. And in that moment, something inside me finally snapped, not from jealousy, but from the realization: this wasn't about a misunderstanding. This wasn't about perception. This was a campaign, and I was the target. The day after the meeting, I walked into the office with the kind of dread that sits behind your ribs and spreads like cold water. My badge beeped against the scanner, the glass door clicked open, and every instinct screamed that something had shifted overnight, something irreversible. The air felt heavier, eyes lingered a beat too long. Conversations died the moment I passed. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, trying to bury myself in work. I'd barely logged in when a Slack notification popped up. Sierra, Team Channel, please double-check all numbers before sending to clients. We can't afford careless mistakes, especially during review season. No one needed her to clarify who careless mistakes referred to. I typed a reply, stopped myself, deleted it, and pushed away from my desk before my anger made me reckless. On my way to the pantry, I overheard two analysts whispering near the whiteboard. She got HR involved, apparently. Over what? She said she's uncomfortable. With who? A pause, then a low voice. Guess. The word guess hit harder than if they'd said Rowan's name aloud. In an office, insinuation does more damage than any statement of fact. I stepped into the pantry, poured coffee I didn't actually want, and forced my face to stay neutral. Sierra walked in behind me, her heels clicking a little too confidently. She opened the fridge, pretending to look for something. "Oh," she said without turning, "I heard you talk to HR." "I didn't talk to them," I replied. She shut the fridge door slowly. "Well, Camille seems to think you did." I held her gaze. "Stop pretending you're worried about company integrity. You're not subtle." She smiled, small and sharp. "Neither are you, apparently." I stepped past her. "I'm just doing my job." "Are you?" she asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're doing his." The room tilted with heat. For a second, I pictured throwing the coffee in her face. Instead, I placed the mug down gently and walked away, jaw locked. But Sierra wasn't finished. At 11:14 a.m., an email hit my inbox. Subject: Harris pitch. Urgent fixes needed. CC Rowan, 2 managers, half the team. In the middle of the chain, Sierra had written, "Lena, these numbers still don't match the dashboard. This is the second time this has happened. Can you please confirm whether you're using the updated reporting sheet? We need reliability right now." Attached was a screenshot, an altered one, with the same wrong conversion rate from earlier. I stared at the monitor, rage burning so hot it made my hands shake. Eli rolled his chair closer. "It's her again," he whispered. "Check this." He pulled up the revision history. Sierra's name. Again. "That's 3 times," he said. "She's making it look like you can't keep track of basic data." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe evenly. "Why is she doing this?" He looked at me, expression softer than usual. "Because Rowan looks at you the way she wants him to look at her." The bluntness of it stunned me. I opened my mouth to deny it, deny the possibility, deny the consequence, but he held up a hand. "I'm not saying anything about you," he clarified. "I'm saying Sierra needs a story where she's the victim and you're the villain, and the office is buying it." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he didn't understand, that none of this meant anything. But the truth sat heavy between us. Rowan was looking at me differently, and everyone knew it before I dared admit it to myself. That afternoon, we had a team sync in one of the smaller, glass-walled conference rooms. Halfway through discussing deliverables, Rowan asked, "Lena, can you stay after? I want to go over next quarter's messaging with you." My stomach dropped. Sierra's eyes snapped toward me instantly, bright with hunger. "Actually," she said, voice casual but loud enough for everyone, "shouldn't we keep things transparent? Maybe we all stay for that part." Rowan's brows tightened. "It's not necessary. It's just a quick one-on-one." She lifted her brows. "Right. Another one." A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. I opened my mouth. "I have a hard stop at 5. You can stay," Rowan cut in, smiling lightly. "It won't take long." Silence fell. He didn't mean anything by it, but to everyone else, he'd just confirmed the rumor. After the meeting, as people packed up, Sierra brushed past me and murmured, "You really should be more careful." "It's embarrassing at this point." I didn't look at her. I couldn't. If I did, I'd break the fragile restraint keeping me from exploding. Instead, I stayed behind as Rowan closed the conference room door. "Lena," he said, "don't let Sierra get under your skin. She's threatened by you, that's all." "That's not all," I said quietly. He paused. "You think I'm crossing a line?" I didn't answer. He took a step closer. "I only want to support your work." "That's the problem," I said. "It doesn't look like support to anyone else." He frowned, genuinely confused, or pretending to be. "I can't control what people see." "But you can control what you do," I said. A flicker crossed his face, hurt maybe, or frustration, but before he could reply, someone opened the door. It was Josh. "Oh, sorry," he said, blinking. "Didn't know you two were in here." I felt something inside me snap. Being seen in that room, with the door closed, with Rowan standing too close, it was another puzzle piece dropping into place in a narrative I hadn't written. "Rowan," I said, stepping back, "I'm leaving." "Lena, we'll talk later," I said, though I didn't mean it. I walked out with my shoulders squared and my pulse pounding. Every coworker in the hallway looked up. Every whisper followed. By the time I reached my desk, my decision was made. I wasn't going to survive by being quiet. I'd tried that before. I'd left a whole job because of it. Not this time. This time, I will watch, collect, document, wait. If they wanted a story, I'd give them the truth. And when the climax came, they wouldn't be ready for me. The morning of the Q3 performance and alignment review felt like walking into a storm I'd been watching gather for weeks. The sky outside the windows was a flat, metallic gray, and the hallways buzzed with a kind of electric tension, quiet, rehearsed, expectant. People weren't just showing up for a meeting, they were showing up for a spectacle. I took my seat near the front because I refused to shrink. The conference room was already packed. Rows of rolling chairs, the hum of the projector warming up, paper shuffling under restless fingers. The smell of coffee and corporate anxiety hung thick in the air. Camille from HR sat against the wall, tablet resting neatly on her knee. She offered me a polite, unreadable nod. Sierra sat 3 seats back, posture perfect, hands folded like she was preparing to testify at a trial she'd orchestrated. Rowan stood near the screen, flipping through the slides, face cool and contained. But when his eyes met mine, something flickered. Fear? Guilt? I didn't know. I didn't care anymore. When the meeting started, he went through the usual motions, numbers, charts, performance patterns. I barely absorbed a word. My pulse thudded in my ears. My laptop sat closed on the table in front of me, and inside it, evidence. Weeks of screenshots, revision logs, messages, and a recording I prayed I'd never have to use. "And now," Rowan said, "we'll review the Harris campaign results. Lena, the floor is yours." A dozen heads turned toward me. I rose, smoothed my jacket with steady hands, and walked to the front. When I turned to face the room, I saw all of it at once: the doubt, the curiosity, the quiet hunger for someone else's downfall. Offices love a fall from grace. It gives everyone permission to feel superior. I clicked the remote, and my first slide lit up the wall. I walked them through the numbers, the segmentation insights, the growth percentages. My voice was even, calm, almost detached. When I finished, I took a step back. Sierra lifted her hand. Of course she did. "Yes?" I asked. "These numbers don't match what was circulated in last week's internal deck," she said sweetly. "Which version are we supposed to trust?" Murmurs rippled through the room, tiny, eager waves. I clicked again. A new slide appeared, one that wasn't in the official deck. Date stamps, file names, a table showing a series of edits to my work, every single one linked to her username. "I pulled the revision logs from the shared drive," I said. "These numbers were altered after I uploaded the original file, not by me." A sharp inhale from somewhere in the back. Sierra's smile faltered. "Anyone can adjust numbers. I fix things all the time." "That might be believable," I said, "if it hadn't happened multiple times. Always to data tied to my name. Always right before reviews." I clicked again. A screenshot filled the screen, cropped Slack messages from a private channel. "Sierra, if he wants to hand this girl the spotlight, we can make sure she looks stupid when she gets it." Gasps broke through the room this time, louder, harsher. Even Rowan turned his head sharply toward her. "That was taken out of context," she snapped. "What's the context?" I asked, because from where I stand it looks like harassment, sabotage, retaliation. Camille sat forward.
"Is this verified?"
"Yes," I said. "I have the full log, and I also have the audio of Sierra saying she'd make sure I didn't survive here." Sierra went pale, then red, then something twisted. "You think you're innocent? You think he wasn't giving you special treatment? Everyone saw it." She pointed at Rowan like she was throwing a spear. "He messages her at night. He keeps her late. He walks her out. He makes sure she gets every high-visibility project. You think that's fair?" Rowan opened his mouth, but I spoke first. "I never asked for any of that," I said clearly. "I told him no, repeatedly. I tried to set boundaries, but I wasn't the one turning those interactions into rumors. I wasn't the one weaponizing perception to make myself look better." I scanned the room, meeting every pair of eyes. "All of you were watching me," I said, "but you weren't watching the person who was manipulating the narrative." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Rowan finally spoke, voice strained.
"Lena,
This isn't about you," I said, not looking at him. "Not right now." His jaw clenched. Sierra gave a bitter laugh. "You think anyone believes you? He's been doing this for years, favoring his latest shiny project. You were just too naive to see it." Rowan's face hardened. "Sierra, stop." She ignored him. "Admit it," she demanded, turning to the room. "Admit you knew exactly what you were doing." I felt the shift happen inside me. A click, a cold settling. The moment fear burns off and resolve takes its place. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed with the folder titled Insurance. "No," I said. "I'm not admitting anything that isn't true." I turned the laptop toward the room. "But I am showing everything that is." I projected the final slide, a summary of every incident: tampered files, falsified numbers, hostile notes, Slack screenshots, timestamps. Evidence so clean it sparkled. The room erupted, voices overlapping, chairs scraping, shock turning into outrage. Camille stood. We're pausing this meeting immediately. Rowan pressed his fingers to his forehead. Sierra looked like she'd been hit. I shut my laptop slowly. For weeks, they'd been writing a story about me. This was the moment I rewrote it. The meeting dissolved into chaos so quickly it almost looked rehearsed. Camille called for a recess, managers whispered fiercely in corners, and people who had avoided looking at me for weeks now stared openly, some shocked, some impressed, some suddenly remembering all the times they'd always believed in me. Offices have short memories, but mine doesn't. I stepped out into the hallway, letting the glass door swing shut behind me. The quiet hit harder than the noise. The air tasted different, lighter, sharper. Not victory, not yet. Just oxygen without the weight of someone else's story pressing against my ribs. Behind the door, I heard Sierra raise her voice, a thin, cracking sound. She knew what was coming. HR would investigate every log, every file, every note she ever touched. And Rowan, well, he'd have to answer for his part in this too. Maybe not today, maybe not as publicly, but the company wouldn't ignore the pattern now that the spotlight was turned around. I walked toward the break room, hands steady for the first time in weeks. On the table inside my bag sat the small recorder I'd carried for days, the one I used to capture her words in the pantry. I didn't need to show the full file. Not yet. What I revealed today was only the surface. Evidence, I've learned, is like currency. You don't spend it all at once. As I stared out the window at the city below, gray, humming, indifferent, I let myself feel something close to calm. I hadn't won. Not fully, not safely, but I'd shifted the balance. People were no longer whispering about me. They were whispering about her, about him, about what else might come to light. And they should whisper, because they still didn't know what else I had. They didn't know who else had been watching, or how much further I was willing to go to protect what I'd built. For the first time since joining this company, I felt the ground under my feet again. They thought they'd cornered me. They forgot something important. Cornered people don't break. They observe. They wait. And when the time is right, they strike. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own workplace, hit like and subscribe. Stories like mine aren't rare. Most people just stay quiet because they're afraid of what speaking up might cost them. Share this video with someone who's stuck dealing with a toxic boss, a manipulative coworker, or office politics that never seem to end. And tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. I read every message. You might see your story in a future episode, because trust me, what happened in that conference room was only the beginning.